In 1908, a chemist named Hans Schwarzkopf opened a small drugstore in Berlin and began selling a powder that, when dissolved in water, produced a lather capable of cleaning human hair without stripping it of every trace of natural oil. He called it Shampoo, from the Hindi word shampoo, meaning to press or massage. It sold modestly. Nobody was particularly excited about it, because in 1908, the idea that a person needed a specific commercial product to clean their hair, distinct from the soap they used on their body, distinct from the various home preparations they had been using for decades, distinct from the simple option of not cleaning it at all, was not yet a widely held conviction. Most people in 1908 washed their hair approximately once a month. Some washed it less. And the remarkable thing, the thing that the modern shampoo industry, valued today at over $30 billion, has spent a century carefully training you not to think about, is that for most of those people, once a month was working fine. The story of shampoo is not simply the story of cleanliness getting better. It is the story of an industry that invented a problem, sold you the solution, and then quietly adjusted the problem to require more solution, in a cycle so effective that most people alive today cannot go more than 2 days without a product that did not exist in any recognizable commercial form until the 1930s. But before we get to the industry that manufactured the need, we need to understand the 10,000 years of human hair management that preceded it. Because what people did before shampoo is not what you have been led to imagine. And some of it worked better than anyone in the modern hair care industry would like you to know. Human hair is not designed to be dirty. This is the fact that the pre-shampoo history of hair care keeps returning to, and the fact that the modern shampoo industry has the most commercial incentive to obscure. The human scalp produces sebum, a complex mixture of lipids secreted by the sebaceous glands attached to each hair follicle. Sebum is not grease in the pejorative sense. It is a precisely engineered substance that coats the hair shaft, protects it from environmental damage, regulates the scalp's microbial ecosystem, and maintains the hair's structural integrity in a way that no synthetic conditioner has yet fully replicated. The problem with sebum is not that it exists. The problem is that it accumulates. In the absence of any cleaning intervention, sebum builds on the hair shaft over days and weeks, collecting environmental particulate, dust, smoke, pollen, and eventually producing the heavy, flat, odorous condition that the modern world calls dirty hair and the pre-modern world called, with considerably less distress, normal hair. The question that every civilization in human history faced was not whether to address this accumulation. Virtually all of them did, but how? And the answers they arrived at, across 10,000 years and every inhabited continent, reveal something that the shampoo aisle of a modern pharmacy is specifically designed to prevent you from understanding. Water alone removes a significant portion of sebum accumulation. Mechanical action, combing, brushing, massaging, distributes sebum along the hair shaft and removes much of the particulate accumulation without any chemical intervention whatsoever. And the scalp, left to regulate itself without the twice-daily chemical stripping that modern shampoo delivers, reaches a sebum equilibrium within a few weeks that is, by most objective measures, healthier than the artificially maintained chemical environment of the daily washed scalp. Every culture that ever existed before the 20th century knew this, in practice if not in theory. They just called it something different. They called it grooming. The oldest documented hair cleaning practices in human history are Egyptian. Papyri from approximately 1500 BC describe preparations of animal fat and plant ash, a primitive soap compound, used to clean both skin and hair. The Egyptians were also among the first civilizations to develop the comb as a primary hair maintenance tool. Combs carved from ivory, bone, and wood have been found in Egyptian burial sites dating to 5000 BC, predating any evidence of chemical hair cleaning by millennia. The comb was not a styling tool in the ancient world. It was a cleaning tool. Daily combing removed debris, distributed scalp oils, and managed the parasite populations, lice specifically, that were a universal feature of pre-modern human hair regardless of social class. Lice in ancient hair were not a marker of poverty. They were a marker of having hair. Egyptian nobles were deloused by servants. Roman senators were deloused by servants. The elaborate hairstyles of the Roman court, built over hours by trained hairdressers called ornitresses, were constructed on hair that had been combed, oiled, and treated with a range of preparations, including pigeon dung mixed with oil, and a compound of ashes, earthworms, and vinegar, specifically intended to address lice populations. The most sophisticated hairstyles in the most sophisticated civilization on Earth were built on a foundation of earthworms and pigeon dung. That is not a condemnation of Rome, it is a description of the available technology. And within those constraints, it worked. Roman hair, by the standards of what hair management could achieve without synthetic chemistry, was well maintained, well styled, and the subject of cultural obsession at every level of society from the emperor to the street vendor. Julius Caesar reportedly combed his thinning hair forward from the back of his head to conceal his baldness and was deeply sensitive about references to it. 2,000 years of human vanity, condensed into one comb. The Indian subcontinent produced the most sophisticated pre-modern hair care tradition on Earth. And it is not a coincidence that the word shampoo derives from Sanskrit. The Hindi word champo, from the Sanskrit chapayati, meaning to knead or press, described a practice of scalp massage using oils, herbs, and plant-based preparations that had been refined across centuries of Ayurvedic medical tradition. Indian hair oiling, the practice of massaging the scalp and hair with preparations based on coconut oil, sesame oil, amla, neem, fenugreek, and dozens of other botanicals depending on the specific hair condition being addressed, was not a beauty ritual in the casual modern sense. It was a medical practice, codified, documented, and administered by practitioners who understood the relationship between scalp health, hair condition, and systemic well-being with a sophistication that European medicine would not approach for centuries. The Shampoo treatment, which European travelers to India encountered and described with consistent admiration from the 17th century onward, involved massage, heat, herbal preparations, and an understanding of sebum management that achieved, through entirely natural means, results that modern trichologists have had to spend decades of synthetic chemistry to replicate. The word traveled before the product did. British colonial officers returning from India in the early 19th century brought the concept of shampoo back to London, a head massage with herbal preparations. It became fashionable in certain circles. It evolved, through the commercial instincts of the Victorian beauty industry, from an Ayurvedic medical practice into something increasingly divorced from its origins. By the time Hans Schwarzkopf dissolved his powder in Berlin water in 1908, the word had lost its Sanskrit roots, the practice had lost its medical framework, and what remained was a commercial product looking for a market it did not yet have. The market would be manufactured, with extraordinary precision. The transition from monthly hair washing to daily hair washing in the Western world was not driven by advances in hygiene science. It was driven by advertising. In the 1930s, as liquid shampoo replaced powder and became widely available for the first time, the major shampoo manufacturers faced a specific commercial problem. Their product worked, it cleaned hair effectively, and clean hair, hair washed once a week or once a month, as most people were doing, did not need to be washed again for several days at minimum. This was a problem. A product used once a month generated dramatically less revenue than a product used daily. The manufacturers understood this with perfect clarity. The solution they arrived at was not to improve the product. It was to change the consumer's understanding of their own hair. Advertising campaigns throughout the 1930s and 1940s introduced and relentlessly amplified the concept of oily hair as a social liability, not a natural biological condition, but a personal failure, a hygienic inadequacy, a source of professional and romantic disadvantage that only regular shampooing could address. By the 1950s, weekly washing had become the recommended standard. By the 1970s, the recommendation had shifted to every other day. By the 1990s, daily washing was the norm in most Western markets. Each shift was driven not by any change in human scalp biology, which had not changed since the Pleistocene, but by advertising campaigns that redefined the acceptable baseline of hair cleanliness in response to the commercial needs of the companies selling the solution. There is a specific mechanism that made this cycle self-sustaining. Modern shampoo, particularly the sulfate-based formulations that dominated the market from the 1960s onward, strips sebum from the hair and scalp so thoroughly that the scalp's sebaceous glands respond by upregulating production. Wash your hair with sulfate shampoo today, and your scalp will produce more sebum tomorrow than it would have if you had not washed it. The product that was sold as the solution to oily hair was, in a very specific biological sense, causing oily hair. The more you used it, the more you needed it. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented physiological response to sebum stripping that cosmetic chemists have understood since at least the 1980s. The industry understood it and continued selling the same formulations. Today, a counter-movement has emerged, the no-poo movement, the water-only washing trend, the revival of hair oiling practices drawn directly from the Ayurvedic tradition that produced the word shampoo in the first place. Its practitioners report a transition period of several weeks, during which the sebum overproducing scalp recalibrates to a lower production rate, followed by a stable equilibrium in which hair cleaned with water alone or with occasional use of gentle cleansers is healthy, manageable, and indistinguishable from chemically washed hair to anyone not specifically looking for the difference. This is not fringe science. It is the observable consequence of allowing the scalp to do what it evolved over millions of years to do without the twice-daily chemical intervention that the 1930s shampoo industry decided was necessary. The Egyptian with her ivory comb and her animal fat preparation, washing her hair once a month in the Nile. The Roman ornatrix working earthworm compound into a senator's scalp before constructing the elaborate hairstyle that would be worn to the forum. The Ayurvedic practitioner massaging warm sesame oil into a patient's scalp as a treatment for the specific hair condition that the patient's constitution, their prakriti, made them susceptible to. None of them had shampoo. None of them had oily hair in the clinical, problematic sense that the modern shampoo industry defined and then offered to treat. They had hair. They managed it with what was available. And what was available, refined across 10,000 years of daily practice without a commercial incentive to make it more complicated than it needed to be, worked. Hans Schwarzkopf's powder, dissolved in Berlin water in 1908, was a genuine innovation. It cleaned hair more effectively than soap, less harshly than industrial solvents, and more consistently than the herbal preparations that had preceded it. It was a good product solving a real problem. What followed, the daily washing norm, the sulfate stripping cycle, the $30 billion industry built on a biological dependency that the industry itself helped create, that is a different story. The comb found in an Egyptian tomb 5,000 years ago cleaned hair without stripping it, distributed oils without removing them, and required no repeat purchase, no advertising campaign, and no manufactured conviction that what your scalp was doing naturally was a problem requiring a commercial solution. It was a piece of bone with teeth cut into it. It worked then, it works now. The next time you stand in the shampoo aisle choosing between 37 varieties of a product that did not exist 100 years ago, each one promising to solve a hair problem that may not have existed before the product created it, you are standing at the endpoint of a very long commercial journey that began with a Hindi word for pressing and ended somewhere considerably further from its origins than anyone involved in the beginning intended. Your hair was not broken before shampoo fixed it. That is the thing the bottle cannot afford to tell you.